Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some more new products from Colorado Crafts and Anita Duram. These are just some of the Halloween release stamps that we did not use the other day. We are using Happy Cataween, Happy Haunting, and the Bark side. And we're going to do a slimline card. If you didn't see the other day's video, I will make sure that I link it below for you to find it, because we're just going to take some of the same ideas that we talked about in the beginner friendly card and apply them to this slightly more advanced scene, and just talking about perspective and scale. So just kind of working on our scene building skills. This, again, there is no masking required for this one. I am going to create masks, but that's only because I decided to do an ink blended sky. For the stamping portion, there's absolutely no mask required except for the moon. I forgot about the moon. The moon did have to be masked in order for our little Happy Halloween banner to not have a moon through the middle of it. But yeah, so basically when we talked about the, before we start talking about the scene and the stamping, let me get the business end of things out of the way. So if you are not familiar with Colorado Crafts, they do free shipping days, a couple of days after a new release. Today is the first day that is free shipping. So today and tomorrow will be free shipping. If you decide that you want to make a purchase, save yourself some dollars on shipping. Also, they always offer, and I don't know if this is common knowledge or not, they always offer a full bundle at 10% off. So that's all the stamps and dies, and then a full bundle of just stamps at 5% off. If you do the just stamps, you get a free extra stamp set. If you do the complete release, you get a free extra stamp set and extra die. So you get a discount and then you get free stuff, which I think is pretty awesome. Plus, you know, you get free shipping, which is amazing. So just to mention, you know, those things. But now let's get back to what we're doing here. So this is Eclipse masking paper. This is how I'm creating my masks. I need to do the masking because I wanted to do ink blending in the sky. If you're going to do what we did the other day, which is all Copic coloring, you won't have to create any of these masks except for the Happy Halloween banner at the very top. I like Eclipse masking paper. This is pretty much my go-to. I have used other ones in the past. This one just comes on in a roll and it's really easy to use. So that is why... I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. That's how I feel about it. I feel like it's affordable and it works really well. So here I'm just going in and I'm stamping, making sure to ink up the things I know I need to stamp. I originally thought, you see me creating the little masks for the ghosts below. I originally thought that I was going to do my grasses with ink blending as well. That is why I created those masks. But I did not do it that way. I ended up doing it with Copic markers. And so it was completely unnecessary and a gigantic waste of time. Don't be like me. Save your time. So you do need the mask for the Happy Halloween. And you do need the mask for the house and the bushes if you're going to do ink blending. If you're not going to do ink blending, no mask required outside of that Happy Halloween banner. So I've just trimmed my masks out, fussy cut them with my scissors. Here, what I'm doing is I'm going in with a pencil very, very lightly and just creating the shapes of the hills that I want so I know where to stamp my cats. I'm going to erase this later on. This is just for me to know my general layout. I would recommend that you do this if you are not 100% comfortable with scene building. Just get in there with a pencil and give yourself some light little marks to follow along with. You can always erase them afterward and nobody will even know that they were there. So one of the things that we talked about in the previous video is that if you... the higher up that you stamp something on your card, the further away it's going to look. Adding in scale is something that is important when we're talking about what gets stamped in front. So if you put these stamps next to each other, not stamped on anything. The house is about 2 3/4 inches tall, but then our little ghosts are about 2 inches tall, and our little cats are about 2 inches tall. So if you put a cat next to a house, the cat's going to look very tiny, right? If you put a 2-inch cat next to a 3-inch house, your cat is going to look enormous. He's going to look like the biggest, most well-fed cat you ever saw in your life. So in order to make the scale make sense, you have to stamp the house further away in your scene so that it looks smaller and your cat looks bigger because it's up close, or your dog. So here's where I'm going. All my stamping is done. I'm going to go in and I'm going to erase those lines. I've already decided that I'm going to do the Copic coloring for the grasses. So that's why I didn't even create a mask for the cats. There was no purpose to it. I did go in, as you saw me do. Originally, I didn't create masks for my bushes, but I did need them to mask off my skyline. The only other bit of masking I'm going to add is just, this is 1-inch Post-it note masking tape, and I'm just going to put that down at the bottom, and this is to just make sure that when I'm doing my ink blending, I'm not going to get any ink below the line of the house where I don't want it. I wanted a sunset-y kind of vibe, and so I chose to go with yellows, oranges, pinks, and a little bit of purple. This does not work out for me. This does not work out for me because sometimes, people are people and accidents happen. So I went in with my yellow and I'm working up towards my purple. Because the moon is in the top left corner, I'm going a little bit heavier with my ink blending on the right-hand side so that the sky is lighter where it's closest to the moon and heavier where it's furthest away. Well, that was the game plan anyway. I still think we kind of achieved it. But I made a little boo-boo. And you're going to see, because I didn't realize it as it was happening. I realized it after it was too late. So that just happens sometimes. And you guys know I say everything is salvageable. I didn't redo the card. I didn't change any of my stamping. I'm totally invested in this. And I just rolled with it. So here's me using that Seedless Preserves, getting a little bit of a darker blend. And then I like to do all of my ink blending twice just because I feel like it gives me a much better blend. And again, I am trying to deepen up the color on the right-hand side. I chose to use my brushes, even though they do a lighter application, so that I would be able to build it up on one side but have it lighter on the other. Now watch what happens here. The next color I should be using is yellow. I have the yellow brush in my hand, PPS. Am I picking up Seedless Preserves with my yellow? Yes, I am. Am I realizing it after the fact? 110%. So my sky was supposed to go yellow, orange, pink, purple. And what ends up happening is it goes brownish, orange, pink, purple. It's okay. It was all right. I went back over it again with my other colors to just kind of brighten it up. I don't think by any means that it ruined the card. I just think it wasn't what I intended, and it's okay. It's all going to be all right. So now that the ink blending is done, I can go in and remove all of the masks, and then from there, we're just going to go straight into the coloring. There is so much coloring. So we've talked a little bit about the scale, how in order to make things make sense, if they are close to the same size, you have to stamp the item that you want to be the biggest item, in this case a house, further away. In order for it to make sense that it is so much further away, I decided that I was going to add hills. This puts each of my players on a different level so that it would make sense that they would be similar in size, but when you view the card in its entirety, the house is further away, then the cats, then the dogs. And the hills are going to do that. Why am I going in with these super light colors? Well, to be candid with you, it's because I'm scared. It's because I'm unsure of myself and how all of this is going to lay out. So if you are also scared, which is a perfectly acceptable emotion to feel when you're trying something new, do it scared. It's okay as long as you're pushing yourself and you're still doing it. I do so many things in my life scared. Like, all the things. So I've laid down myself a little roadmap is what I've done with my 2 lightest colors. I've outlined my hills and I've outlined my little pathway. So now that I have those little safety blankets, those little security measures put in place, I can go in with my actual colors that I want to use and put them down more confidently because I've seen how they're going to look with the lightest colors. If you go in and you put down your lightest colors and you're like, nah, fam, this looks janky, I don't think that this is going to be right. The lightest colors are the easiest ones to cover up. So don't fret about it. Just rework it with your lightest colors until you get something that you're happy with, and then go in with the darker ones. So here, basically, we have this little winding stone path. So all the way back, it's coming up over the hills. You'll also notice that in the stamp, Anita drew these little rocks, which are totally adorable. But as these rocks get closer to us, again, scale, they have to get larger because the rocks look very small closer to the doorway. If we made them all the same size, the rocks that are by the house are going to look huge. So they have to get bigger as they come closer to us. So what Anita probably drew with intention to be like a little stone walkway, we have now turned into something that's more of like a stepping stone sized path. So in the middle, they're only slightly larger. As they get out to these ghost dogs, they're much larger. Because if you were looking at it in real life, the rocks would be much bigger up close, much smaller further away. So in order to create those rocks, again, operating scared, I just put down my lightest color for my base of my path. I outlined where I wanted my rocks to be in my next lightest color, which is my mid-tone. Now I can go in with my darker colors. I'm going to add some shading, some darker shadows underneath the rocks. And that way I'm going to start to build up the color in my pathway by adding those shadings. So the darkest color directly underneath it, the next darkest color just slightly more surrounding it. The third color, which is this E55, is going to be the majority of what I fill it in with. And then I'm going to use that lightest color around the edges, but we're not going to do that just quite yet. Or will we? I'm not sure. I just colored this morning, so you think I would remember, but I actually don't. We might do it next, we might not. No, we're going to do the stones first. So for the stones, I just am doing a combination of warm and cool grays. People, they're rocks. There's no rhyme or reason to it. Just put some color down so that there is some color differentiation between the rocks that's going to make them look more realistic. You don't have to be married to any of it. Like just put the color down. They're all going to look great. They're just stones. Little stepping stones. So that's all I'm doing is I picked a W5 and a W3, a C5 and a C3. So I have some warm and cool tones just to make them slightly more interesting to look at. But obviously these are supporting actors. These are not going to be main focal points. These are items that we can change the scale of so that we can control the perspective that our viewer is seeing it from. Once these are done, I am going to go in with a fine liner and just very loosely kind of outline these. The reason I'm doing that is because the ones that are drawn in the stamp set have that black outline, and your rocks or your stepping stones are going to look a little bit weird if they don't match what's already stamped there. It's going to help it be more fluid. Here's where we're going to go in with the lightest color and just go around the edges. And that color is going to help blend into our grasses. And that's what we're going to add next. So with the previous card, we just added our grasses super flat. Like we just put some shadows underneath their bums and then just went in and did some shadows, and then we did the hills in the background. This time the hills are creating our different perspective up front. And so in order for your hill to look higher than the background, you have to add your shading behind the hill and leave the top portion of the hill as the brightest. So you can see I'm coloring these hills in sections, and that is so I don't lose that line that I created. If you are worried about losing your line, just color them in their entirety, section by section. I didn't need to do that. I could still see my line from where I had, drawn it in with the lightest color. But if that's not enough for you to be comfortable, then legitimately just do it section by section. There's no wrong way to do it. Now that I have my base color down, I'm going to go in with my darkest color, and here's where we're going to add the shadows. The shadows are going to go right up against the top of the hill. So here I'm just outlining them. You can see the two hills. And now I'm just going to go in and I'm going to flick some color behind it. Automatically, without any other shading, you can see how it brings the hill that the cats are on forward. I'm going to go through, I'm going to add, she's got these cute little grasses drawn in. We're going to add some of our own little cute little grasses just to kind of break up that large lawn area. You don't have to do that. And then we're going to move forward to do the next hill. So again, we're just adding that shading behind it so that hill is going to come up and over. And it's going to come up and over because we leave that edge the lightest and brightest. So just going through, adding our grasses. I like a YG family. It's a super bright green, but if you like more muted colors, you can absolutely do that. I thought about going back in and kind of knocking the brightness of my colors back. But truly, I enjoy bright colors. And so I didn't really think that it was necessary to knock them back. If this was a full-on night scene, I definitely would have, because it would have made more sense. But it's not. It's like a sunset scene. So I can absolutely get away with a little bit more of a brighter color and still have it be working together. Creating those highlights and shadows is what is going to give us a ton of dimension. So when we first started this card, it all looked super flat. Now, because we have created these hills, these shadows, and these highlights, it's a much more interesting scene because you have different areas where you can see the little rock pathway, areas where you can't see it, lots of hills and different things that kind of make it look like this big long walk to this big spooky house, which is really what I think I was kind of going for. With my lightest color, I'm going to blend that into that lighter brown. I didn't do, last time, remember we practiced our flicks with the grasses. I didn't do that this time. I didn't think it was necessary. I left it all pretty smooth. So you can make the decision for you what kind of grasses you want. You absolutely could go in here and add more texture with the flicking method of adding the grasses. But just so you're aware, the further away it gets, the less detail. So I would maybe only add the grasses to the hills that are by the ghost dogs and maybe just in front of the cats, and then I would let the rest of it be smooth with no detail. I used a dark brown marker to just color in some areas of the trees, and now I'm a sloppy colorist. I can own that. That's completely true. If you're a sloppy colorist, no worries. That's why they make a colorless blender. So that is what I'm doing here now. I'm just going in with the colorless blender. I'm pushing out any of the green that I got on the little sheets because obviously I want them to be white. So in order to color white, you are laying down the shadows. You're going to leave the vast majority of it white. I'm going to follow the lines that are given to me by the illustrator. With my darkest color, I'm just putting in a line, just a little tiny line. I'm going to go over that with my mid-tone, which is a C3, and just extend those slightly past. I'm also going to do just a little bit on the top of the head. I'm going to blend that out with a C1, and then the rest of it is just going to be white. All we're doing is putting in the shadows. Same thing for the next little puppy dog who's dressed up as a ghost. Following those lines, just basically covering those lines with one little line of the darkest color. If there are wrinkles in the sheet, I may add just like a little triangle of color, just like one little flick of the darkest color, just to give it more shape. But really, when you're coloring white, you're just being very, very light-handed. and just putting in the shadows. And then once again, I'll blend that out with the C1, and then both of the ghost dogs for the vast majority will be done. We'll come back and get the little tail that you see on the one on the left and the little feet for the one on the right later. The cats are much more glamorous. So this one I kind of viewed as like a little princess cat, you know, in this big kind of furry, fluffy coat with this little teeny tiny hat. She looked very much like a princess to me. And so I chose to do some pinks and purples. And again, we talked about before, limiting our color palette so things don't get muddy. I'm just reflecting the colors that are in the sky into my outfits. So obviously the white is a neutral that doesn't even count. But the colors that my little kitty cats will be, you can really only see the one cat's face. I'm doing the pinks and purples, and then I will add in some oranges. But you can do these whatever color you would like. Just know that it may give the impression of the card being much busier than you intended, just because there's more things going on. Here, using this, you know, mimicking your color palette throughout is going to just make things much more cohesive and much less likely to get, I don't know, too busy to be visually pleasing. So for the fluffy coat, in order to create that texture, I'm going in and I'm doing my shading like I normally would. This is the same rules that we always follow. Anything where 2 points meet or where one object lays on top of the other, that will be a shadow. So where she is holding her little bucket in front of her belly, there will be a shadow. Where her armpits are, where they're like, and her arms are coming together, there will be a shadow. Where her the top of her coat is kind of flowing over, there will be a shadow. But then to create the texture, I'm using stippling. Stippling is just a series of dots that you'll use the same colors in the same areas to just create that like little dotted texture. It makes it look fluffier. And then for the two hats, we have a striped hat and a pretty plain hat. I decided to just carry that purple theme right on through. This is a little bit more purple than my sky is, but they're cousins, so I think it's okay. I also chose to do the cape of this cat purple. And you know what? I don't know what's going on with my Copics lately. I used to be so on top of like refilling them, but I am not anymore. And so before I started this, I refilled my greens just because I knew from the scene we did the other day, they were getting a little dry. But then I went to the VO4, definitely needed to be re-inked. So I had to stop my video in the middle of it so I could re-ink my VO4. But anyway, so I did the cape. I did it the same way that I did the ghost sheets. I just followed the lines that were already there. And if there was like an indent for the cape, then I added a little bit more shadow. If there was a high point, like where there were two shadows next to each other, the high point in between would be the highlight. That's going to give it, again, more movement. And then we're going to go in and do the black. This is pretty scary for a lot of people, and that's okay. So doing the black, you can see I'm adding very, very little black to the black hats. I'm just really adding it to the darkest parts. And then I'm going to just move directly into my grays. And this is so that I can still create a highlight. Next to, you can see those little two lines in this hat, and it's where it's kind of like crumpled over on itself. If you don't keep the highlights in between those, you're going to lose that shape. So you want to be very light-handed on those areas. For the hat that is striped, I'm just treating it like a center highlight. So I'm adding shading to the left and right-hand side, and I'm allowing the highlight to land in the center, which in this case is going to be a C5. That will be my lightest color. If you are heavy-handed, I am heavy-handed, so you're in good company. Well, am I good company? I don't know. I like to think so. If you are heavy-handed and you eat your highlight, don't worry about it. You can go back in and add those highlights with a white gel pen. It's not something that's like life or death. Don't stress about it. Just, we'll try again next time. For the orange cape, purple's complement is yellow, but it also plays really nicely with a yellow-orange because yellow-orange's complement is blue-violet. So they're all right, like across from each other on the color wheel. So orange does look very striking with purple. I think that's probably why it's become a more common combination for Halloween. Just like yellow-green is red-violet's complement. So yellow-green is a Halloween-y color, so bringing in pink again makes sense. They just look nice together. So I chose to do the cape orange, and then you can pick whatever colors you want for your little animals. I just chose to repeat the colors that I already had used. So I used some warm grays, I used some cool grays, I used some blacks, and I used the same browns that we used for the pathway. The only thing of note for this particular cat, because you can see so much of the cat, after I did all of my shading, I just went in with a series of like short little flicks to give it some texture, like little hairs. And then I blended that back out with another, with my lightest color. And that's just to give it a little bit more texture. As I'm going along, I'm finding areas, that maybe I had missed when I was coloring in my greens. I will do the same thing with the sky. Like I'll find areas in the sky where maybe my mask wasn't perfectly lined up. Don't sweat those either. Just fill them in, with the color, or for the sky, like I'll find a Copa color that's close and I'll just fill it in, and it's going to be all good. There's so much going on. Nobody is going to look at your scene and nitpick it. The only reason that you even notice those things is because you're the person coloring it. But I promise you the recipient isn't going to look at it and be like, oh, your color here doesn't exactly match your sky. I promise you they won't. So yeah, I really, I knew that I wanted to use these stamps in a way that would make a scene that I would normally make. But I also wanted to show you how those things that we first looked at in the beginner level still play into how you build your scene at a more advanced level. Learning those basics will help you because there's still going to be the rules that you apply as you go forward. No matter how simple or complicated your scene is, things like scale and perspective will always play a role. So just as you're going through and you're getting better at scene building, just keep that in mind. Like the things that you learn, those base things, those foundational things will carry you through. There is she's wonderful. She's so talented. Her name is Sylvie, but on Instagram, if you have Instagram, her name is Khalees Cards, I think is how you say it. I will link it below, but she doesn't do videos. She does like videos on YouTube. She does reels. And her ability to put together a scene is amazing. She did these ones for Alex Siberia, where it was like little penguins, but she put penguins in like little drinking cups, and the scale made the penguins look like little teeny tiny little penguins that were just like hanging out in these drinking cups. It was brilliant and it was so fun. But anyway, if you're a person who loves scene building, I will link that below so you can check her out because she is truly amazing. I enjoy her reels very, very much. So onto is it a house? Is it a castle? Castle house? Spooky castle house? Whatever. I filled in the windows to be yellow. I missed the window on the door, but I'll come back and get it. So I am doing the shading on this as if the windows are emitting that yellow light. Again, this is something that's slightly more advanced, but once you break it down, it isn't really. So it's the same thing as the light source for the moon. Like it would be darker further away from the moon. It would be lighter towards the moon. the windows are going to be the same thing. So we're going to add the shading. This part in the middle is inset, so it's definitely going to be darker than the rest of the house. These parts out here are going to be lightest around the window. And that's because the window is going to be giving off some light. I'm using warm grays for this, by the way. So I'm going to go in with my lightest color. Again, this needed to be re-inked. My apologies. Don't worry. I'm back again here in just a second. So I'm going around the windows a couple of times with my W3 to give myself a nice light area that I can then go in and glaze over a yellow so that it's going to look like it's emitting the light. So I went in with a Y02, which is the lightest color we used for the window, and I'm just going to circle around these. Not a lot of work, not a lot of anything, and right away you can see it looks like the house is glowing. Super cool, easy little trick that you can do. There's where I remembered the door, the window on the door. And now we're going to go in and do the little roof. So for the roof, again, we have this moon in the top left-hand corner. So its shadows are going to be to the right. That's how the light is going to hit the roof. So my darkest colors, while I am still going in and adding shading to all these little lines, because these are the shingles, you know, so they're laying on top of each other, even though they just look like wavy lines, that's not actually what they are. They are shingles that are layers and layers of shingles. So they still do need to have some shading underneath them, but the vast majority of the shading is going to be on the right-hand side. So you'll see as I'm adding color, I am adding the majority of the darkness to the right, whether it's the two peaks or the center side. I am still adding the majority of the shading to that right-hand side. So it's going to look like the moon is catching, you know, those peaks and stuff is catching the moonlight. For the lightest color, I'm going to bring in a C3. I'm going to add that just to the left-hand side, and that's going to push back the color. For the underneath, like the little windowsills underneath, I'm going to go in with a C5 and a C3. And then again, I'm going to just glaze right over top of that with the Y02 so that it looks like everything is glowing. Here's where I'm going in and fixing any areas, like I told you, that my mask didn't completely cover. I just went in with similar colors. Get as close as you can. Layer colors if you have to. I had to layer colors to get a close match. So no worries about that. For the door, I chose the same browns. I just stuck with the darker colors. And again, I used a little bit of a lighter color around the window for the door. And then I went around that with the yellow. For the banner, coloring it white, just like we did the ghosts. And then for the moon, I'm going to do some warm grays and a little bit of yellow. So I knew that like I said, I wanted to come in and I wanted to apply some of those foundational things to a more advanced scene, something that would be what I would more normally make. And I really love this one. I think it's super fun. There is a lot going on, but I can definitely see like giving this to one of my kids, or if you have grandkids for Halloween. It's not too spooky. You know, that it's going to be scary, but it is fun and kind of playful, and I love that. So for the for the bats, I felt like they got a little muted because of the ink blending, so I'm just going to go in and outline them. Real talk, my intention was just to outline the trees and the bats, but I cannot control myself, so I ended up outlining everything. I'm just being real with you. Like, sometimes I can't self-edit. I'm adding some shimmer to where the moonlight is going to hit, the lights, as well as some of the these little characters. Like, who doesn't want glittery ghosts? I would totally wear a glitter ghost sheet. And then I'm going to do the white highlights. Again, this is just adding little details, nothing, you know, no rhyme or reason to it. And then this is the whole card. So I hope you guys learned a little bit more about scene building. If you missed the first card, again, I will link it so you can check it out. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with me, for spending your time with me. I always appreciate you, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.